Alright guys, Murph's here, and today I want to talk about this. A Remington Model 1100 semi-automatic shotgun chambered in 12 gauge. Now, in order to talk about this shotgun, we are going to talk about just a little bit of history. Now, Remington of old was actually a company that was on the forefront of not just innovation, but also sales and competition within the market. Very different from the Remington that we know today. Now, this would also come from a little bit of an association with John Moses Browning, which pretty much any firearms manufacturer who was of any worth was involved with John Moses Browning to some extent. Now, John Moses Browning would develop the Browning A5, which would be a very popular semi-automatic shotgun system. Remington would wind up being able to produce a licensed copy of it designated the Remington Model 11, which was kind of a more budget version of the A5. And this would be one of the more popular semi-automatic shotguns in the United States market, and also one of the few semi-automatic shotguns in the United States market. Now, that was a recoil-operated system, which one of the issues with recoil-operated systems is they have a tendency to be rather heavy. So there was some interest in being able to move over to a gas-operated system, which Remington would eventually develop a gas-operated semi-automatic shotgun designated the Model 58. However, there were a couple of issues with Model 58, and that was primarily that the gas system was a little bit over-designed and very space-intensive, which wound up taking up a lot of space in the magazine, diminishing the capacity to 2 shotgun shells in the magazine. Remington wasn't happy with that design, and there were some other issues that were noted with the Model 58. So ultimately, this would cause them in 1963 to unveil an updated version, the Remington Model 1100. And they unveiled it with no shortage of fanfare. There's actually a video that's talking about the development process and what all it is that Remington invested into the 1100 in order to be able to make it this great commercial success and all this kind of stuff. And if I find the link for it, I'll put it in the description so you guys can check that out if this content interests you. Now, the Remington 1100 would do exceedingly well in sales, and having finally changed up the system, what they would wind up doing, the gas operating system that is, what they would wind up doing is that they would instead make it a sleeve that more or less wraps around the magazine tube underneath this handguard and is operated by gases tapped off in the barrel, typical of a gas operated system. Now, this shotgun would go on to be produced in pretty much every popular gauge of the time except for 10 gauge. So 16 gauge, 20 gauge, 28, and 410 would all be produced in this pattern, in this layout. And it would also have a, I guess you could say, budget model that would have been sold at Walmart's or Kmart's designated the Sportsman. Now, this would look pretty much like any other functional Remington 1100. However, it would have cheaper wood and not as nice scroll work done on the receiver. Now, this shotgun would remain in production up until the 1980s, in which case it would be replaced by the Remington Model 1187, which would adapt a lot of updates and take advantage of new materials and design and all that kind of stuff in order to be able to kind of bring this overall layout into the 21st century. But that's a whole separate video, which, if you're interested in, I will throw a link in the description to my review of the Remington Model 1187. Now, this shotgun does continue to have a spot in the Remington model, or in the Remington catalog. However, it is not necessarily a standard production item anymore. It's kind of a special run type deal. And they still produce it in 12 and 20 gauge, and you can even get it with a synthetic stock. At other times, this shotgun has come out in a competition model with an extended magazine tube, and there was also kind of a tactical model at one point and all that kind of stuff. The tactical model would have included an extended charging handle. All right. That pretty much covers history. Why don't we go ahead and talk about the specific features of this shotgun that I have with me here today. All right, so here we have a 26-inch barrel. This is rem choke compatible. You'll see that we have a vent rib on top of the barrel. This is great for helping to dissipate some of the heat that can arise, heat mirage and all that kind of stuff, if you're going through a lot of shooting, a heavy shot string of some sort. You'll note that we have 2 aiming beads on this setup, which is not normally my preferred for wing type shooting. However, I do prefer this for more stationary target type shooting, like on turkeys or something along those lines. Now, as you can see, I have increased the capacity of this shotgun. This was originally a 5-round capacity shotgun, and it is now a 10+1 capacity shotgun. So we'll talk about why I did that before too much longer. Now, of course, a part of the attachment process here also included a sling swivel. I have added this Blue Force Tactical 2-point adjustable padded sling. I love 2-point adjustable slings. They are my favorite. All right, so we have a wood forestock here, which has some nice checkering cut into it. We come back to our receiver. Our receiver is not drilled or tapped for optics mounting. However, you can get aftermarket optics mounts that'll attach where these pinholes go for the trigger mechanism. You can see we have some fairly fancy scroll work done on the bolt and the receiver, which doesn't necessarily impact this functionally at all. However, it is pretty nice for pride of ownership. I really appreciate the level of detail they went into on these particular shotguns. Now, as all semi-automatic shotguns are concerned, there's some sort of locking mechanism in order to be able to keep the bolt to the rear, as well as being important to the overall loading process. Now, different brands do it different ways. How the Remington 1100 works is once you load up this shotgun, you don't have a round in the chamber yet, you pull the bolt to the rear, and then you press the lifting lever button so that it then loads the round. And then after that, it'll load each successive round into the chamber without needing any additional help. Now, the problem with this setup in its normal form is that the button is very small and it's located right back here on the lifter. That can be kind of problematic if you're trying to reload this very quickly, because you got to come in with a very odd angle on the shell in order to be able to engage that button. So I managed to find an aftermarket adaptation, which is what I have installed here. This is an extended release button made by Dave's Metalworks, which is a small metalworking shop out of, I think it's California, but don't quote me on it. So this attaches where the old button went and now turns all of this bottom metal into the release button. So it makes it very easy to release the bolt. However, also be careful because it becomes exceedingly easy to release the bolt. And if you're trying to, I don't know, clean this, take it apart, put it back together, whatever it is that may be, and you have the bolt locked to the rear, be careful of this because you might, I don't know, smack yourself in the hand by accident with a charging handle twice in a row. I don't know who that would have possibly happened to or whether or not I'm actually speaking from experience. All right, now the safety on these is located to the rear of the trigger guard, which is pretty typical on Remington shotguns. This is not my favorite location. It's not that it is difficult to get to the trigger from here. I do prefer it at the front of the trigger guard though, so that I'm coming back onto the trigger instead of having to push up to it. It's just a personal preference thing on my part. Now we do have a semi-pistol grip, which again has some nice checkering set into it. I prefer semi-pistol grips. It gives me something to pull back into the shoulder with and kind of help stabilize the shotgun. Also, they're a little bit more structurally sound when it comes to putting your weight on it and all that kind of stuff in field type conditions. Now here we have a plastic butt cap. This would have been pretty typical for the time period. You can also find these with this swapped out for a rubber butt pad as well. Though this shotgun is kind of long to begin with. I wouldn't necessarily want to add any more additional length to it. All right, guys, that's features. How does it shoot? Well, we kind of got to talk about this in two different stages here. So I've had this Remington Model 1100 for a long time, and I made these additions to it. Prior to me making these additions to it, I seldom had malfunctions out of it. I've been hunting with Remington Model 1100s ever since I was a kid. I actually took my first bird with a Remington Model 1100, and I've known them to be very reliable shotguns. It's one of the reasons that I like them. However, ever since I installed this magazine tube and then eventually this extended release, I've had some teething issues with function. So here lately, I have run 3 different loads through this shotgun and it's pretty much choked up with every one. I have run Wolf buckshot, some Federal number 9 target loads, and then also some Nobel, some sort of Italian manufacturer, low recoil buckshot as well.
just that horseshoe, I'm gonna get the turn with the illuminated light here.
Which is some of the footage that I have. So far, the shotgun has definitely had some functional issues. Now, this might be a tensioning the spring type thing. You know, maybe it'll work itself out eventually. This bottom metal does have to be ground to the actual size and all that kind of stuff to be able to fit into here. It is hand fitted to the individual shotgun, so this might just need a little bit more time to help work things out. I noticed the malfunctions that I was having with the Nobel ammunition. The shotgun shell that was supposed to be coming out of the magazine tube was getting hung up on the lifter. So there might be something in there that I'm going to have to spend a little bit more time kind of paying attention to and all that kind of stuff and seeing if maybe this needs to go back to a gunsmith for some additional care, something along those lines. But for the moment, I'm going to keep running some shotgun shells through it and see if the problem works out on its own over time. All right, guys, so what is this shotgun to me? Well, this is selected by me to be my competition shotgun. Now, in general, guys, even growing up, I've always had the opinion that shotguns to me are something that is kind of a blunt type tool. It's something that I need absolute simplicity with the expectation that it'll always run. That's why I generally prefer pump action shotguns for most applications, especially fighting type applications. And I do have fighting shotguns set up that are pump action. However, when I started thinking more seriously about getting into 3-gun, which though I have not yet done, part of the problem with getting into 3-gun is making sure that you have 3 guns to be able to compete with. I really wanted to pick out something that would be good for the competition circuit, not necessarily with a home defense mindset set into it, or a defensive mindset. So that caused me to start evaluating semi-automatic shotguns I have available. Now, as previously mentioned, I've always respected the Remington Model 1100 for being a dependable and reliable system. So this is what I kind of turned to when I decided that I was going to embrace utilizing a semi-automatic shotgun for this purpose. So that's what I've been trying to set it up for. This is why we have the extended magazine tube, the extended release, and all those types of things. And it's almost completely set up. The only thing I haven't done yet is add a side shell carrier. Now, the side shell carrier I plan on going with is the same setup that I have on my Maverick 88 truck gun, which uses an adhesive-backed Velcro system that you can then slap additional shell carriers onto. You can swap them out and all those kinds of things. Now, I haven't attached this to this yet, partially because I really love the scroll work, and this is a really stupid reason, and eventually I'll attach it. I just haven't necessarily been prioritizing it very high. I don't want to do anything to cover up this scroll work prematurely, and even though I can eventually remove that adhesive backing and all that kind of stuff, I like it. It's just one of my favorite things about this shotgun is this type of attention to detail, and I'm somewhat resistant to the idea of covering it. But with that one last little addition, which I'll do eventually, it's just not ranking high on my list right now, this shotgun will be, once I get it functioning properly, ready for prime time on the competition circuit. Of course, I also have to find a 3-gun competition somewhere near me, which there really aren't any at the moment, but who knows, maybe there will be in the future. All right, now what are my recommendations off of this shotgun? Would I recommend that you utilize it as a fighting shotgun or as a competition shotgun? Honestly, no. That might be kind of surprising. The shotguns are reliable. However, once you start to fiddle with the system by attaching additional parts and all that kind of stuff, you could impact that reliability kind of like I have. And we've yet to see how much more I'm going to have to do in order to be able to get this thing ready to go. Am I going to have to invest more money in either gunsmithing, or am I going to have to invest more money in ammunition? Probably going to wind up being both at the current rate. Now, if you were to be able to get it to function properly, would I consider it to be worthwhile? Well, yes, absolutely. Clearly you do as well if you invested that time and money. But there are ready-to-go tactical competition-style shotguns on the market that you wouldn't have to fiddle with as much in order to be able to get them to do what it is that you want them to do. So Beretta Model 1301s, Benelli M4s, Stogers, all those types of things. There are plenty of shotguns out there that will do what this does, but from the ground up built to do so and already set up to be properly accessorized for those purposes. That's the direction that I would send you. Well, what about as a hunting shotgun? You know, strip away this magazine, have it in more of its standard configuration. Would I recommend it as a hunting shotgun that you're going to take through the brush and the bramble and throw around and all that kind of stuff? Maybe leave it in the bottom of your duck blind or anything along those lines. Again, no. For that purpose, especially for hard kind of hunting use, I would actually recommend a Remington Model 1187. It's with the synthetic stock and all that kind of stuff. It's actually set up for that type of torture. Now, you can get this in a synthetic stock, so that would help out along that approach, but it is something to keep in mind. In addition to that, this is a 2 3/4 inch chambered shotgun, and that's what the majority of Remington Model 1100s are. There is a Remington Model 1100 Magnum, which chambers the 3-inch shell. But if you're wanting more kind of a blind setup that you can just kind of plug and play and do whatever it is that you need it to do, the 1187 comes chambered for 3-inch shells. So again, I would point you in the direction of the Remington Model 1187. Well, if you wouldn't recommend it for other people to use for tactical use, and you wouldn't recommend it for hard use hunting, what would you recommend it for? Well, guys, this would be a great upland bird gun. If you wanted to do that, this would be a perfectly acceptable use for that. So I don't completely go against it for hunting type uses. But this would also be excellent for just having fun on the range. Just breaking clays with some friends and all that kind of stuff, and just having a good time. There are some guns that can just be fun. And that would be where my recommendations would go for this particular gun. Rabbits, quail, pheasants, all that kind of stuff, as well as just having a good day at the range. All right, guys. I think that pretty much covers my thoughts on this particular shotgun. I hope you found this interesting, and aside from some channel updates, that's pretty much what I got. Have a good day. All right, guys. If you enjoyed this content, or if you enjoy other content that I've put up, Murph's Law is now on Facebook. So go ahead, check the link in the description, hop on the Facebook page, and get involved. If you want to have discussions, discuss different aspects of firearms and all that kind of stuff, discuss different aspects of shooting or some mindset type things, get involved in some chats with some other like-minded people, or even see some behind-the-scenes stuff, updates from me and all that kind of stuff, hop on the Facebook page. We'd love to have you there. All right, now with that, that's pretty much what I got. Have a good day.